Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the thing that once fueled you no longer moves you. The mission that once gave your life meaning now feels distant, like a memory of someone you used to be. You start asking yourself, did I lose my purpose, or did it evolve without me noticing? The truth is, your why isn't meant to be static. It's alive. It breathes. It changes as you do. Because who were at 20 isn't who you'll be at 40. And who you'll become tomorrow depends on whether you're brave enough to question the why that drives you today. The danger isn't in losing your why. It's in clinging to one that no longer fits the person you're becoming. Purpose doesn't disappear with time. It matures just like we do. What once lit a fire in your 20s might feel like ashes in your 30s, not because it lost value, but because you evolved. Men often struggle with this shift more than they admit. They're taught that purpose is a mountain to climb once, not a range that stretches endlessly. Yet as life changes, careers shift, families grow, failures humble, that once defined you must stretch to. A purpose that doesn't evolve becomes a prison made of your own past ambitions. The truth is, growth doesn't kill purpose, it keeps it breathing. Growth asks uncomfortable questions. It forces you to outgrow your comfort zones, your labels, even your identity. Many men cling to their first purpose like a badge of honor, afraid that changing it means weakness or inconsistency. Women, on the other hand, often allow their why to move with their seasons, not because they lack focus, but because they understand that nurturing, leading, and evolving are all parts of one rhythm. When a man resists that rhythm, he begins to confuse endurance with stagnation. We mistake consistency for commitment, as if never changing direction means strength. But staying in the same lane when life has taken a different turn isn't strength. It's fear disguised as loyalty. Growth challenges us to redefine what success means now, not 10 years ago. For a man who once lived for competition, purpose might later become contribution. For a woman who once lived for nurturing, purpose might later become impact. The shift isn't betrayal, it's expansion. The capacity to evolve your why is proof that you're paying attention to the life you're actually living, not the one you planned years ago. Men often measure themselves by progress. Women often measure by connection. But both depend on growth to stay alive inside. When growth stops, purpose fades into routine, that silent erosion of meaning that makes you wonder why your wins don't feel like victories anymore. It's not burnout. It's misalignment. Growth doesn't ask you to abandon what mattered. It asks you to translate it into who you are now. The mistake most make is trying to drag yesterday's purpose into today's reality. It's like trying to wear a suit that fit you perfectly years ago. You can still button it, but it doesn't fit the man you've become. The deeper truth is purpose doesn't age. It ripens. It gathers wisdom, depth, and direction. The goals may shift, the arenas may change, but the essence remains the same: to matter, to contribute, to build something that outlives emotion. Men seek legacy. Women seek impact. And both find fulfillment when they allow purpose to evolve instead of forcing it to stay still. Growth keeps purpose alive by inviting curiosity back into the room. It keeps your why from becoming a memory and turns it into motion. Growth is what keeps you in pursuit, not of what once made you feel alive, but of what still does. When passion fades, most people panic. They assume they've lost something sacred. The spark, the drive, the hunger that once made everything feel alive. But fading passion isn't the death of purpose, it's the evolution of it. Men often see this fading as failure, as if they've broken some unspoken rule about always being on diet. Women, in contrast, tend to sense the change earlier, recognizing that passion shifts not because we stop caring, but because our hearts are preparing to care about something new. Passion doesn't disappear. It transforms, waiting for you to catch up. Men are conditioned to chase intensity. From a young age, they equate passion with fire, with domination, success, or proving themselves. That's why when the flame dims, many interpret it as weakness or loss of direction. But fire isn't the only form of energy. Sometimes the warmth that once fueled ambition turns into a steady glow of wisdom. The same man who once burned to conquer now learns to build, to mentor, to create space for others to rise. Passion doesn't fade because the mission was wrong. It fades because you've reached a point where growth demands a different kind of energy. For women, passion often begins in connection. The desire to nurture, to inspire, to bring meaning into motion. As life unfolds, that same passion may evolve into independence, influence, or leadership. The form changes, but the heart behind it stays the same. When a woman's passion shifts, she rarely calls it failure, she calls it growth. For men, that same shift often feels like disorientation because they've been taught that passion must always roar, never whisper. But passion matures just like people do. It trades volume for depth. The danger lies in confusing fading passion with lost purpose. When we chase the old feeling instead of listening to the new direction, we get stuck. Men especially struggle here. They double down, push harder, try to force back the fire that no longer belongs to them. But forcing passion is like trying to relight wet wood. You exhaust yourself and get smoke instead of warmth. Women often navigate this more fluidly, letting intuition guide them into new arenas. The lesson is universal. When passion changes form, it's an invitation to realign, not a signal to retreat. What we call fading is often just refinement. It's life telling you that you've mastered one chapter, and it's time to write the next. Men who learn to listen instead of resist begin to find fulfillment in contribution rather than conquest. Women who embrace their evolving purpose deepen their sense of meaning beyond emotion alone. Passion's evolution is not a loss of intensity, but a redirection of energy toward greater depth and sustainability. What once drove you to prove now drives you to serve. What once demanded validation now seeks impact. Passion doesn't abandon you. It transforms to match the person you've become, waiting for you to meet it where you are now. The most dangerous why isn't the one you lose. It's the one you never question. When you anchor your life to a purpose you never revisit, it quietly becomes outdated. Men especially fall into this trap because they confuse loyalty with rigidity. They think staying true to the same why forever is proof of character. But what begins as commitment can turn into blindness when you stop asking if your purpose still reflects who you are now. A man's strength isn't in how long he holds on to his why. It's in how courageously he's willing to refine it. Life changes us in ways we don't notice until our purpose starts to feel heavy. The job that once gave you pride now feels like a burden. The goals that once gave you direction now feel like routine. When you never revisit your why, you end up defending a mission that no longer fits your reality. Men are taught to endure, to push through, to prove they can hold the line. But endurance without reflection turns progress into paralysis. Women, on the other hand, tend to revisit their why more naturally. Not out of uncertainty, but out of awareness. They understand that growth and purpose move together, and when one changes, the other must adjust. The real danger of a neglected why is that it keeps you chasing yesterday's version of success. You keep running hard in a direction that no longer leads where you want to go. Many men realize this too late. After years of silent exhaustion, wondering why achievement no longer feels like fulfillment, they assume the problem is external. The job, the relationship, the system. But it's internal. It's a misalignment between who they were when they chose their why and who they've become since. Women often sense this shift sooner. They feel when meaning begins to drift and have the instinct to pause, to realign before the cost becomes too high. Revisiting your why isn't a betrayal of who you were. It's an act of integrity. It means you're honest enough to admit that your experiences have reshaped your values. Men often fear that changing their why will make them appear lost, but it actually makes them authentic. Because what drives you at 20 shouldn't drive you at 40. Responsibility, love, failure, and wisdom all reshape the lens through which you see purpose. Refusing to update your why is like refusing to update your compass. You might still be moving, but you're no longer heading where you truly want to go. The unexamined why is seductive because it feels safe. It gives you something to cling to when uncertainty grows. But safety and growth rarely coexist. Women intuitively understand that life's seasons require different kinds of strength. That purpose isn't static but fluid. For men, this understanding must be learned. That reflection doesn't weaken drive, it sharpens it. Revisiting your why isn't about abandoning your mission. It's about ensuring that the mission you're fighting for still deserves the man or woman you're becoming. Your old why is the foundation you stand on, but your new one is the horizon that calls you forward. What once built your identity, your habits, your discipline, eventually becomes too small for the person you're becoming. Men often struggle with this realization because they see changing their why as abandoning their roots. They forget that evolution isn't betrayal, it's progression. The purpose that once built your strength might now limit your growth. Not because it was wrong, but because it already fulfilled its role. You outgrew by becoming the person it was designed to create. Every season of life demands a different version of purpose. For many men, the early why is about proving to themselves, to others, to the world, that they can achieve, conquer, provide. It's a powerful force that forges discipline, resilience, and drive. But at some point, proving must give way to building, and building must give way to meaning. The man who continues to chase validation long after he's earned respect ends up trapped by his own success. Women often navigate this shift more fluidly. Their sense of purpose tends to expand through empathy and intuition, allowing their why to evolve as their life context deepens. The struggle for men lies in letting go of the why that made them. They identify so deeply with their past mission that redefining it feels like erasing themselves. But identity isn't lost when purpose changes. It's refined. The old why was meant to give structure. The new one gives depth. A man who once lived to achieve may now live to empower. A woman who once lived to care may now live to lead. These shifts don't erase who we were. They elevate what we can now give. The courage to redefine your why is what separates those who peak early from those who keep evolving. When you hold on to an old why for too long, it becomes nostalgia disguised as purpose. You keep repeating patterns that no longer challenge you, staying loyal to a version of yourself that no longer exists. Growth requires the humility to ask, what now? That question doesn't come from confusion. It comes from awareness. The same fire that once pushed you to chase your dreams now asks to be redirected. Not extinguished, just refocused. Men who understand this transition begin to lead with clarity instead of competition. Women who embrace it begin to influence with presence instead of pressure. Your new why doesn't replace your old one. It builds on it. It's the evolution of meaning that keeps life purposeful instead of predictable. The old why gave you strength. The new one gives you wisdom. The old why taught you how to win. The new one teaches you how to contribute. Every new purpose begins where the old one ends. In the space where growth demands you step out of what's familiar and into what's next. Because your old why built your foundation, but your new one will redefine your entire direction. Meaning isn't something you find once and keep forever. It evolves as life teaches you more about who you are and what truly matters. What once felt profound may later feel shallow, not because it lost importance, but because your perspective matured. Experience doesn't just change what you see, it changes how you see. For men, this shift often feels uncomfortable because they're conditioned to measure meaning through achievement. The next goal, the next win, the next milestone. But experience softens the edges of ambition. It reveals that meaning isn't found in how high you climb, but in what your climb reveals about you. When you're young, meaning often hides emotion. Men equate progress with purpose, believing that movement itself equals meaning. Women, however, often sense it earlier, that meaning comes from depth, not speed. They experience life through connection and reflection, while men tend to experience it through action and outcome. But as life unfolds, both begin to understand that meaning changes as their lens widens. The things that once seemed essential start to fade into the background, and the things they once ignored suddenly hold the deepest value. What you thought would define you ends up teaching you instead. Every major experience, love, loss, success, failure, reshapes the way you interpret the world. Men often resist this shift, wanting their original map to stay valid. They cling to the same definitions of strength, leadership, and success even when experience is offering them a new vocabulary. Women, on the other hand, often embrace this redefinition more naturally. They allow life seasons to change their focus, understanding that meaning isn't constant. It's contextual. A mother's meaning differs from a leader's. A student's meaning differs from a mentor's. And each phase adds a new layer of understanding. The challenge comes when we mistake consistency for truth. Men are especially guilty of this. Believing that if they once said something mattered, it must always matter in the same way. But that kind of rigidity suffocates growth. Experience doesn't erase your old values, it refines them. A man who once found meaning in being the provider may later find it in being present. A woman who once found meaning in caring for others may later find it in caring for herself. The evolution of meaning isn't a sign of instability. It's proof of consciousness. It shows that you've been paying attention to what life has been trying to teach you. Experience is the lens that changes clarity. The more you live, the more you realize that meaning isn't fixed in events, but fluid in interpretation. The same moment that once caused pain can later produce gratitude when viewed through a wiser lens. Men often struggle to let that new perspective in because it requires vulnerability, the willingness to admit they see differently now. But growth always begins with the courage to reinterpret your story. Women tend to adapt more intuitively, giving themselves permission to reframe meaning without guilt. They understand that evolving meaning doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. Meaning shifts because life never stops offering new evidence about what's truly worth living for. The goal isn't to hold on to old definitions, but to let experience refine your understanding of them. As your lens changes, so does your truth. The same life looks different when you've lived it long enough to understand its depth. Experience turns certainty into curiosity, and curiosity keeps meaning alive. Because meaning was never meant to be a conclusion. It was always meant to be a conversation between who you were and who you're still becoming. You don't find a new why. You outgrow an old one. The moment most people start feeling lost, they assume their purpose has vanished. But what really happened is that they evolved faster than their why did. The goals, dreams, and values that once defined them can no longer hold the weight who they've become. For men, this moment feels like failure. They've been raised to believe that purpose is fixed, that once you've chosen your path, you must never question it. But the truth is, you don't lose your why, you simply outgrow the version of it that once made sense. Growth doesn't erase purpose, it refines it. Men are taught to worship stability, to cling to consistency as proof of strength. They often see changing direction as weakness or indecision. Yet, staying loyal to an outdated why is like wearing armor that once protected you, but now restricts you. You can't move freely when your identity is welded to a mission that no longer fits. Women tend to navigate this differently. Their sense of purpose often expands and adapts with life's seasons. They allow their why to evolve as they do, understanding that meaning grows alongside experience. Where men see change as risk, women often see it as renewal. That's why they're more comfortable letting go of an old why, not because they lack conviction, but because they trust evolution more than attachment. The old why was never wrong. It served you. It built your discipline, your focus, your identity. But it was never meant to last forever. A young man's why might be to prove himself. A mature man's why becomes to provide, to mentor, to impact. The shift happens when achievement is no longer enough to sustain fulfillment. The fire that once fueled ambition begins to burn differently. Quieter, deeper, more intentional. Women feel this too. A woman's why might begin with nurturing others, but later evolve into creating influence, independence, or legacy. The why doesn't vanish. It transforms into something more aligned with who she's becoming. Outgrowing your why feels uncomfortable because it demands honesty. It forces you to confront the truth that what once gave your life meaning might now be limiting your growth. Men especially struggle here. They try to reignite old fires instead of realizing they've simply moved into a new season. They double down on what used to work, mistaking persistence for purpose. But no amount of effort can revive a mission that has already served its purpose. Women often sense this tension earlier. They feel when meaning starts to shift and give themselves permission to change direction. Men, on the other hand, often wait until the discomfort becomes unbearable before they finally listen. Outgrowing your why is a sign of growth, not confusion. It means your soul is evolving faster than your strategy. The man who once sought validation now seeks contribution. The woman who once sought belonging now seeks influence. These shifts are not replacements, they are progressions. The same why that once pushed you to climb might now push you to teach others how to climb. That's the beauty of evolution. It doesn't destroy the old purpose, it integrates it into a wiser one. Every stage of life gives birth to a new level of awareness, and with it, a deeper why that speaks to the person you've become. The danger lies in chasing a new why as if it's something to be found out there. You don't discover a new why. You realize it from within. It emerges when you allow reflection to meet experience. When you stop trying to replicate old emotions and start listening to what life is asking of you now. For men, this means surrendering the need to always be the warrior and learning to become the guide. For women, it means allowing the nurturer to evolve into the leader. The process isn't about replacing purpose, but upgrading it to fit the next chapter of your humanity. You don't find a new why because it was never missing. It was waiting beneath the surface, hidden inside your next level of growth. Every experience, every failure, every victory stretches you into someone new. And the moment you become someone new, the old why no longer fits. Outgrowing it doesn't mean you've lost direction. It means you've earned the right to redefine it. Your why grows with you, And when it starts to feel too small, it's not a signal to start over. It's an invitation to expand. Because purpose isn't found, it's remembered, rewritten, and reclaimed every time you choose to grow beyond who you were yesterday